Today is another opportunity to explore a general concept of our faith. We can do that in ordinary time, a little bit easier than the other liturgical seasons. And what's good for us to work out today is the idea of casuistry and to what degree it should shape our faith as Catholics. I realize that most of you have never heard that word before. I'm not 100% sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it sums up a stereotypically Catholic way of thinking. Basically, casuistry is our system of moral thinking that says, this is a sin and you must do this as a result. This is sinful, therefore this is the automatic consequence. Expressing it as simply as I possibly can, casuistry is a systematic demand to follow the letter of the law. It's a case-based system of morality, as the word implies. So people who really believe in this idea would say an entire human life can be summarized by one gigantic moral flowchart. You did this, then this happened. Then you did this, so this happened. That's why you turned out like this and this. I tell you, if that is how God actually operates, the final judgment will be a very black and white process. You did all these things. You failed to do all these things. Sorry, you don't qualify for heaven. Down you go. Thanks for playing. At this point, you're probably thinking that casuistry is a pretty horrible thing, and you're mostly right. But to make an attempt to summarize both sides of the issue, casuistry exists for a reason. Back in the Middle Ages or so, there were a ton of priests. Sometimes there was one priest for every 50 people. That's way too many priests by any standard. And as you might imagine, many of these priests were undereducated and very spread out. So the church assembled moral guides for parish priests so that those priests across the known world would be mostly giving the same unified moral advice. Priests back then needed that black and white distinction. Taking the Lord's name in vain, 3 Hail Marys. Stealing from work, return the goods, say 3 rosaries for the sake of your boss. Without those guides, we probably would have descended into chaos with every priest just making it up as he goes along, and that's not what we're here for. We need to be united in a common understanding, and a casuistic attitude was useful in that way. The other way this kind of thinking is helpful is that it is correct in that some sins are more serious than others. So it's good to have a rule book about how certain sins are likely to affect us, because the extreme opposite of what I'm talking about is relativism, where anything is okay as long as you can justify it to yourself. But here's the problem, and I'm sure you've already kind of guessed it in your head. Casuistry has no patience whatsoever for extenuating circumstances, context, intention, ignorance, emotional states, or personal experience. It boils down our actions to mere facts and consequences. What did you do? When did you do it? And how? That's all that matters. Well, can I tell you why I did it? No, that doesn't matter. So you can see the error at work here. The why always matters. Why is the most important question of all. And I wanted to share this concept with you today. I have heard people claim that all of religion boils down to a guy saying, you can do this, you can't do this, or else. Mercy and understanding are not actually what religion is centered around. It's just a guy telling you what you can do or what you can't do. And as usual, I respectfully disagree. That is not the church. It has never been the church apart from years where a useful tool turned into a bad habit. People remember bad habits. Jesus Christ was never casuistic. He always saw the action, but also the person behind it. Think of the woman caught in the act of adultery. Let he who is sinless cast the first stone. Think of the people that he healed, who believed that they were sick because God was punishing them for some reason. Think of the way he forgave Peter for his denying him 3 times. Jesus never got overly hung up on an action at the expense of seeing the whole person. And he did that without downplaying whatever sins might have been present. Jesus never turns his back on the truth, but he never treats people with the attitude of one size fits all. And believe it or not, this is the core teaching of the church throughout the centuries. We are not a casuistic church. We're a church that is concerned with the whole person. Again, human dignity founded on truth. That's the key. So we can't ignore the basic rules. We can't ignore the exact words of Christ, which means there are times where we have to say no. But there is always a way forward. There is always a way to progress along the journey of faith. When you go to reconciliation and confess your sins, the priest will evaluate your words and context. The priest will acknowledge your effort and desire to do better, even in light of a terrible sin in your recent or distant past. A priest will acknowledge that, in fact, some sins are committed as a result of peer pressure, addiction, coercion, manipulation, or an emotionally charged moment. Take as a clear example the sin of saying, "You're a bad person and I never want to see you again." Casuistry says, no, one size fits all, you said it, end of story. But a priest acting in good faith will realize that there is a huge difference between someone who said it because they meant it and someone who said it because they were angry and they were lashing out. The former probably won't regret those words as much as the latter. The latter person will probably apologize and take those words back, if that's possible, as soon as they can. Context, intention, state of mind. These things can change everything when it comes to our morality and our spirituality. If we look at our religion in a purely academic way, one big rule book, well, then we lose that. But if we live our faith and mold ourselves after Christ, we come to better understand the difference between right and wrong, but also how complicated such decisions can be over time. That in turn will make us more compassionate and less judgmental in the long run. And all of that is possible without turning our backs on truth and objectivity. It's simply asking who, what, why, and where. Who, what, and where, but also why. So let me end with this. Mortal sin is real. We have the capacity to do massive damage to one another, and we can't just reason it away or tolerate it as if it's just another part of life. That's the part of morality that the ancient church understood better than we do today. Sin is real, and it is to be feared. What the ancient church didn't do so well, and what we need to build upon as modern Catholics, is we need to build upon the equally true belief that God does not abandon us, even when we try to abandon him. So the next time you're feeling judgmental, either about yourself or another, ask yourself what God, the Father of mercies, wants from that person as the next realistic step forward on their journey of faith.